So, is it a good day or is it a bad day?
Good day.
Every day. Do you feel a little bit of pressure to say it's a good day? Kind of like that's the right thing to say? Huh? It's kind of human, isn't it? Right? It's like the glass half full, glass half empty. Kind of takes a lot of courage to say, yeah, my glass is kind of half empty right now. I'm going to offer up some things for you to consider today. The things that I'm going to bring forward, I don't suggest that they are the truth, because I don't have access to what the truth is. It's much bigger than me. I'm learning all the time. So they're just things that I want to invite you to take a look at, because in my experience, if we look from here, if we look in some of these different places, it opens up new vistas of opportunity for us. And in organizational life, as well as in personal life, I would suggest that's really important. The title of the talk is really transforming our results through transforming our view of circumstances. So let me start off by just giving an illustration. My son loves Japan and has had a love affair with Japan and its culture since he was very small. I have no idea where that came from, but he's. My wife and I promised both of our kids a foreign trip when they graduated high school. So my daughter was the eldest. She went off to France with my wife, and my son was like, we're going to Japan. So we had a great father-son trip to Japan. And when we were there about 3 weeks, and we went to the samurai armory. Now, how many of you are familiar with samurai swords? They're beautiful. They're works of art. And the amazing thing about a samurai sword is it's by people who know these things. They suggest it's probably the strongest metal that mankind has ever created. I've seen where they have actually taken the sword and turned it this way and fired a bullet at the flat part of the sword, and the sword flexed and didn't even make a mark on the sword. They fired a bullet at the edge of the sword, and it split the bullet in half. Again, no mark on the sword. So how is it that these people created all of this fantastic technology all these years ago? And you know, in looking at this, it just really, watching the people talk about this in Japan at the Samurai Armory, some things just really kind of came to mind for me, and I just want to share those with you. Is that, and I think it's a very faith-oriented biblical concept as well, is that if you are the metal, okay, and the swordsmith is basically taking that metal, and what's the first thing that the swordsmith is going to do to that? He's going to stick it in the fire, right? Going to heat it up. Then what's the swordsmith going to do? He's going to take it out of there and he's going to start beating the heck out of it, right? And with every blow, all of the impurities are going to be flying out of the metal. So the way they do this is they beat this, they flatten the stuff out, and then they fold it in on itself, and they beat it some more, and they fold it in, and they beat it some more, and they're heating it all of the time. So if you're the metal, what's your view of what's happening? Yeah. Is it glass half empty or glass half full? Yeah, you're going to be thinking like, my life is over here. All right? You see pieces of yourself flying off into the distance, and you're like, this is it. This is the end. I don't know how much more of this I can take. But if you're the swordsmith, what's your view of what's happening? You're creating. You have this vision of this beautiful sword that you're creating in your mind. Which is right. Which is true. They're both true, I would submit. Just like glass half full, glass half empty. I would suggest that positive thinking on it, just on by itself, on its own is a very dangerous thing, because positive thinking can be delusional. You know, you can be there in your business and needing to address something that's real, but all the time living in denial about it, thinking, I got to think positive, I got to think positive, I got to think positive. No, what you got to do is you got to open your eyes and get plugged into what's really going on. But that's hard to do in organizations, isn't it? Because in organizational life, you have all these other things that go on. That's why entrepreneurial organizations, when they start and it's a few people, you get 12 is a magic number. Jesus was a smart guy. Okay, he picked 12 people to be his inner circle. Yeah, thousands of people following him around everywhere, but he picked 12 to kind of be that leadership team. And so organizations, when they start out and you have a small group of people, there's relationship there. There's a sharing of things back and forth. Information flows freely. The organization gets bigger. What happens? All of a sudden you get, like what I mean, you get a little extra in the middle, right? And all of a sudden that can become a filter for things in the organization. And the interesting thing is in biology, multicellular organisms really become multicellular to enhance the awareness of their experience of the environment. Something that was fascinating to me that I learned not that long ago. I always used to wonder, where do slugs come from? Right? Funny thing to talk about after we just had breakfast. But you know, it's slime mold. Okay? So here you have amoebas, these single-cell creatures that basically send out a signal when the food depletes, and basically they come together and they form a slug. A slug is basically it's another stage of life of slime mold, so that they can move to where there's food. So it's an example of, here's biology going from a single view of the world, a single-celled perspective, to a multicellular perspective that enhances awareness. In organizations, oftentimes the bigger the organization gets, what happens to awareness? It decreases. Why does it decrease? I would suggest it decreases because a lot of times we are basically looking at things from a survival mentality. We're looking at things in the organization like, what does the boss really want to hear? And that's, the people in the middle are like wanting to make sure that the boss sees that they're doing a good job. And so they're a filter. The boss starts to see the world through that lens, and that's all that they start to see. And then the quality of the decisions for the organization suffer. So where are we going with this? Is that, what are circumstances? Circumstances are just the situations that we find ourselves in each and every moment of now. This is really a fascinating thing to consider when you think that the life we live is really only happening in each instant. Okay? Our only opportunity to act is in the moment of now. That's just history. Now we can only talk about that, just like we can only talk about the future. We can't go in our past and act out. We can't go into our future and act out. The only place we have to act out is now. So the way we think about now, what we believe about now, is really, really important to what we can produce in the moment of now. If we're trying to tell ourselves that I've got to think positive, I have to think positive, and deep inside, all your signals and the way you feel is, my God, I just want to sit down and cry. Okay? I would suggest that that's just as harmful to you and to your ability to produce something in line with what your dreams are or what your desired outcome is. That's just as harmful as sitting down and focusing on, my God, look at all the things that are going wrong. I think what's really important in business and in life is to understand that we're here to search out what is it that we want to create. Do you see the world as happening to you? Or do you see the world as something that you can impact? There's a lot of people that see the world as happening to them. That view of life and that view of the business environment and everything else creates and sets up a whole different series of decisions and actions. But if you see your ability to be a creator, then now you see that no matter what the situation is, no matter what the circumstances are, I can impact it. If I don't like what I see, I can make it better. We've got some amazing people in this room this morning that are in their, where they've been planted on our planet, in their world, in their country. They have looked out and seen things that are like, I don't like what I see. And they're going, but I can change it. But I can impact it. That's really powerful. That to me is what leadership is really all about. And it comes from this place of first believing in something that doesn't exist yet. We have a word for that. That word is misused a lot in our cultures. But it's a very powerful word and a very powerful concept. That word is faith. Faith is the hope and belief in something yet unseen. If you go out and you pick up the Wall Street Journal and you read a bunch of bad news about the business environment, it's prognostications, a lot of it is about the past, things that have already happened. But you go to the editorial page and you go to the page that a lot of people like to read, well, what is going to happen? It's like going to the Oracle. Right? So that's introducing a conversation into the moment and now. And if we buy into that conversation, then what do we go back to our businesses and do? Well, I guess we better not, let's take another look at the budget. We better tighten the belt here because things are going to get bad. Really? Really? Are they? They're not bad right now. Yeah, but they're going to be bad. Really? Really? See, if we buy into that, by buying into that, we produce it.
That's true.
All right? I know we have people of different religious persuasions here, but I just want to suggest in a well-known book, the Bible, in Genesis, God created everything by speaking it into being, except for man, which he created with his own hands. But everything else he spoke into being. It also says that we're created in God's image. I would suggest to you that we also create with our speaking.
That's true.
Okay? There's an old saying that talk is cheap. I don't buy it. I don't believe that for a moment. I believe people cheapen talk. I think that language is the tool that we have, and it's what we predominantly use to create with. And think about it. Our whole experience of life occurs as a conversation that we have with ourselves inside our head. It's languaging. Now, in our leadership development work, we go through this concept. We spend days with people taking a look at what neuroscience has told us about how the brain works and how our biology functions. No, I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm a business person. But my partner hired neuroscientists out of the Stanford Research Institute over 20 years ago and put together this material. And so we still engage with neuroscientists because there's fascinating discoveries happening in the world of brain science today and helping us understand how our biology works. The fascinating thing, there's a woman by the name of Candace Pert. Okay, she's done some seminal research in the area of how thoughts impact matter. And quantum physics, all of a sudden we're not going to go into quantum physics, which is a very, very interesting long path. But the interesting thing about that is her research has found, and it's been really backed up by a number of other people who have replicated her findings, is that a thought that we have in our head sends a cascade of chemicals throughout our body, and every cell in our body responds as if that's the truth, that that's real. So our body is being prepared for that future. So, if you are looking at something that's happening in the world, and you're coming at it from a negative perspective, oh, this is going to be bad. Oh, this is terrible. You know, I don't know if we're going to be able to survive this. That's going to impact your decisions. But if you come at it from a standpoint of, and I'm going to surprise you here, I'm not going to go say from a positive, oh, we'll get through it. I'm going to suggest something else. A third way, which is, what else is possible here? Because isn't it really most important that we connect with what's really there, rather than our interpretations about what's there? Because you see, the way our brain works, when we see something in the world, we will experience, our brain will basically say, oh, I know what that is. You know, and you're bringing up what neurophysiologists call a comparative structure. Okay? Your experience of that is hardwired from your past when you experienced it before, and that's the first thing that your brain says, that's what that is. Why does your brain work that way? Because you need to know, do I need to be afraid of that and run? Like in Monty Python, run away, run away. Right? Or can I sit here and do something with it? Is that friendly? And that comes out of our experience of the past. So we've got to be very careful that as we look at things that are happening in the world today, do we just want to repeat our past? Because unless we choose to intervene in that conversation, that's exactly what's going to happen. The neurophysiologists believe, and they tell us that 90 to 95% of the time we as human beings were operating from a part of our brain called the limbic brain. It's also called the reptilian brain. It's our survival center. It is linked up, serving up constantly a view of the world that comes out of our past. And they say 90-95% of the time, that's where we're operating from. That's where we're making our decisions from 90-95% of the time. It's the flesh. Okay? We have this other part of our brain, the frontal cortex, the logic value center. It's where all of our creativity resides. It's where our higher reasoning resides. But that part of the brain's an energy hog. Okay, it takes a lot to light it up. It's like trying to get a 15-year-old out of bed in the morning to go to school. Wake up! You got to come back like 3 or 4 times, right? Poking at it. All right? Why is it so hard? Because we're flesh. Because flesh is matter. And one of the laws of thermodynamics deals with the conservation of energy. Right? The limbic brain is like impulse power. It needs practically nothing to operate in terms of energy. Why? Why are we built that way? Because that's a survival element, right? The limbic brain's job is to take care of keeping this biological package safe. This part of the brain is here to think. This part of the brain is to tell that other part of the brain, yeah, I hear you, that's possible, but what else is possible? But yet we're having that conversation less than 5% of the time. Is it any wonder we go in cycles in our economies? Is it any wonder we have the difficulties that we have? Because where are we choosing to put our faith? Remember, what is faith? The hope for, the belief in something yet unseen. Well, if I go to the Wall Street Journal and I read some editorials about how bad it's going to be this year, we haven't seen that yet. That hasn't come into the moment of now yet. So what are we going to choose to create? And I would suggest that this is the job of a leader. A leader's job, in my view, is not to try to direct, control, administer, or regulate the people in their organization. If you go to the business school textbooks and you look up what it is to lead or manage, the paradigm that's still being taught today is that there's 3 classes of resources: physical, financial, and human. And that the leader's job is to manage those things. Right? You look up managing in the business textbook or even in the dictionary, and you're going to find those 4 principles attached to managing: directing, controlling, administering, and regulating. Let me ask you, does anybody like to be directed, controlled, administered, or regulated?
Not so much.
Do you see the problem there? There's a little bit of a disconnect, I would suggest. Is it any wonder that according to the Gallup's 2013 State of the American Workplace report, which they've been doing this now for over 20 years, okay, that on average across the U.S., that over 70% of the American workforce is either disengaged or actively disengaged in their work? Do you realize that they estimate that that costs the U.S. economy anywhere from 450 to 550 billion, with a B, billion a year? Just from disengagement. I'd say that's a failure of leadership. If you have a leader that understands what there really is to manage in an organization, and I'd suggest to you it's not people, okay, then the leaders can start to move their organizations and inspire and motivate their people in some pretty amazing ways. So if I'm saying, well, you can't manage people, well, what is there to manage? Right? If I'm not supposed to manage those people that are, that a lot of people we talk to leaders all the time. Well, then they say things like, well, yeah, if I leave them alone, they'll just goof off. Really? Do you realize that a lot of the research on people who work from home say that people who work from home produce better outcomes than people who work in the office? They put in more hours. They're not paid hourly, but they put in more hours. Interesting. Well, we would suggest that what there really is to manage are conversations and other action, not people. Remember I said before that we create with our speaking? Perhaps the most important conversations for you to learn how to manage as a leader are the ones you're having with yourself up here. Because if you're believing about your people that they're just going to goof off if I'm not watching them all the time, well, guess what? What kind of results, what kind of outcomes will that belief produce? Because results, if we back up from results happen by action. Would you agree?
Yep.
What influences and controls action? Conversations that we have. Okay? So who's in charge of the conversations that we're having? Do you believe everything that goes through your head every day? I hope not. I don't, but I used to. Okay? I used to think that everything that went through my head belonged to me. That it was mine. But the Bible says we do not battle with flesh and blood. We battle with principalities, powers of darkness. Basically, Satan's army that's, we can't see, but they're whispering in all of our ears all of the time. So do you choose to take ownership of every thought that you have? The Bible says take every thought captive unto Christ. Well, you get to choose which conversations you agree with in your head. You can choose not only from a spiritual standpoint, but you can choose from the standpoint of, are you going to operate out of your limbic brain, out of your survival center, or are you going to operate from this part of your brain? Are you going to choose to exercise the personal discipline to light this baby up? Okay, this can help. To light this baby up, all right, and really go and create something. Because creating is hard work. It means confronting and walking through life feeling like you're half empty all of the time. Those of you who are entrepreneurs in the room, you know what I'm talking about. Okay? You go to start something, and it's tough. Okay? You wanna, walk through the valley of death, go start a business. But if you believe in what you're doing, okay, all right, then you see that's what fills the glass. That's why I said before, I'm just thankful to have glass.
Amen.
Okay? Because what I put in that glass is up to me. And what I put in that glass is really a matter of the conversations that I choose to believe in. And the conversations I choose to bring forward day in, day out, in each and every moment of now. That's it. Thank you.
Good.